What's up, active RVers? Today, I'm going to talk about the hard truths about working remote while RVing. So you had this dream of being able to travel across the country while, building your career and working, seeing all these sites. And while it's great and you get to truly travel across the country and see a lot of amazing things, it's for sure not all sunshine and rainbows. And I'm here to tell you that we had a lot of personal struggles and challenges. We're still learning, so we still have hiccups. And even though I'm not in corporate America anymore, being self-employed, you still, come across these different challenges and things like that. And so I'm going to give you some tips, tricks, firsthand experiences, what's worked for us, what definitely some of the struggles that we ran into. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you whether or not it was all worth it and if we do it again. And so back in 2021, very fortunate. We were able, we were already working remotely. I was a safety and health guy for a company, and being in the office and in the field and stuff like that. But working remote through the pandemic, my wife and I, we made a decision to try to live a more intentional, adventurous life. Exactly, probably similar to reasons why you guys are out RVing as well. And we wanted to get out there. We, again, wanted to go out, sightsee, do a bunch of different things. We had the ability because we were, already working remote at the time. And so there was a little bit of convincing with my corporate America job. There was a lot of unexpected stress and challenges with that. But in 2021, we were able to make that leap. So we sold our sticks and bricks, packed up, and our maiden voyage was out to Vermont. We were going to go to Maine, that up the Northeast United States there. And it was a challenge, to say the least. So watching YouTube videos, trying to prepare as much as you can. And again, my bosses took a leap of faith. They went out to bat for me, saying, that I'm going to be just as productive, and there's not going to be, any sort of hiccups or things. Part of my job being in safety and health is I'm on call pretty much 24/7. And so while I'm not actually, working 24/7, there are, nights and weekends and odd hour times where I have to have Wi-Fi, I have to have cell phone coverage in order to perform the job. I might have to fly back, to my job to go out on different job sites or areas or locations. And so I have to be accessible. And while prepping for this, so Starlink was not as popular as what it is today, which Starlink's not the end all be all, by the way, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to be prepared, so while I was calling these different RV parks, I'm asking questions like, do you have cell coverage? And with the cell coverage, I have to be able to VPN and have a secured network in order to access the files and information. The corporation that I was a part of was very cybersecurity conscious, and there's a lot of different things that we had to do. So it wasn't like I could just log in on the campground's Wi-Fi. And as you guys know, the campground's Wi-Fi are unreliable. Certainly you can't, you can't do Zoom or Teams or WebEx calls on them. And so asking these types of questions, hey, here's what I'm doing. And, can you guys, or is your campground able to accommodate this? And the first campground, they were like, yeah, we have remote workers there, we have cell coverage, they jump on our Wi-Fi. And I'm like, okay, well, that's, as long as we have cell coverage, and I'm able to use my company's hotspot and my MiFi and stuff like that because we had a Wii Boost, you know, I was going to be able to make it work. Thankfully, I had some buffer days built in, you know, so we took some extra vacation time to travel up, get set up. Again, this was our maiden voyage up there, and talk about some stress. So once we get there, we were placed in the back of the RV park. And I'm not going to say which RV park it was. I'm going to keep it confidential. But again, as you guys know, even different placements within the RV park itself, one area could have great cell coverage if you're by a tower, if you're by the office. If they throw you in the back, you know, maybe not so much. And unfortunately, I was in a spot where we were way in the back. Even with the Wii Boost, you need some sort of cell signal in order to boost it. And we didn't have any. And I'm starting to freak out. And I'm like, again, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. You know, again, I assured my bosses and they talked to their bosses and everything was going to be all great. And so I go down to the campground and I'm like, well, hey, you know, we had these challenges. I talked to you, and what kind of solutions do you guys have? And the lady said, well, I think we must have had a miscommunication because we do have Wi-Fi, but you have to be in the office. And in order to make phone calls, we use Wi-Fi calling. And I'm like, well, ma'am, I explained that we have very strict security rules. I can't go on your Wi-Fi, and I can't use your Wi-Fi calling because, again, I can't log into your Wi-Fi, and I can't go down to the office and work, you know, 50, 60 hours a week in your office because your office isn't open that long. And so it was very, very challenging. We were able to work out a deal with the campground. We were able to get out of our agreement. And in hindsight, we ended up finding this other campground in Manchester, Vermont, which is really, really cool. I guess technically it's in Dorset, but Dorset, Vermont, but we've been back there a couple different times, and the area, it's just in the Green Mountains of Vermont. It's super cool. But again, you know, like I said, it was our maiden voyage. I had a checklist. I thought we checked all the boxes off of it, and lo and behold, you know, we had some problems. Now, watching some other YouTube channels, I know that there's folks that have 2 different SIM cards, or maybe the husband will have Verizon, the wife will have AT&T or something like that. That's a really good strategy. We stuck with Verizon, and my wife and I's strategy was to look at apps such as Campendium. They actually have ratings, and people can go in and say how good was the Wi-Fi or how good was the cell coverage and actually what carrier they had. And so we had to be a little bit more strategic that way. And again, you know, just sticking with the company security requirements and stuff like that. Another unexpected challenge was in a remote work corporate America. You guys know that it's quite demanding sometimes. And so, you know, it's typically not going to be a traditional 9 to 5. You're working extended hours. And that there was a perception, or an unexpected perception, where I wanted to make sure that the folks in the office, or I guess in the location around the office, they weren't thinking that I was just taking a vacation. And so this was, you know, part COVID. I know some of the folks that I worked with, you know, were doing the same thing, but it's like you're checking emails at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, you're on the phone. We're, you know, again, it's a high demanding environment. There was a lot of burnout and decision fatigue that happened. So I had to create boundaries and create a dedicated office space because what ended up happening was I was there, but I wasn't mentally there. So, you know, my wife and I would be eating dinner and my brain's not there. You know, it's out on the job site, or it's out dealing with other issues. And there were conversations that I don't even recall having because I'm just on autopilot nodding off. And that certainly put a stress on the relationship. And within the RV, you have a small space. And so it took a little bit to kind of figure out, hey, I need to have a dedicated workspace where I don't have to set up and tear down. Everything is right there. And when I'm at the desk, it's work mode. But when I leave, I have to shut it off. It's gonna be there tomorrow. I'm hitting the objectives, I'm hitting the milestones and the KPIs and all that, but I don't need to check emails at 9:30 because I wanna make sure that, you know, folks think that I'm on it. And so that took a lot of time. Some other challenges is the time zones. So, you know, if your traditional 9 to 5 is going to be on the East Coast and you want to travel out to California or Nevada or somewhere out in the Pacific Northwest, you're going to have to change your schedule and get used to getting up, you know, really early, and or you're going to have to work out an agreement or something with your bosses. For me, that wasn't an option. So I got used to getting up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and, you know, that would be, you know, 6 o'clock or something like, you know, around there on the East Coast. And that was a sacrifice that I personally had to make in order to do it. But again, I chose to leave and go, you know, out and explore the different areas and go to Colorado and Wyoming and Montana and all that stuff. So that took a little bit to get used to. The other thing with decision fatigue and working a demanding job is typically, you know, you have a Monday through Friday, but as everyone knows, you know, there's weekend stuff. And what was happening is we were traveling every week, every other week, and we'd go to one campground, go to another. And what I was finding out was I never had a break. So we're out, we're trying to go explore, and I'm working a lot. And then on the weekends, I'm tearing the RV down, packing up, getting ready to move. Then we're moving somewhere. And then I'm thinking about work, you know, okay, we got to get here by Sunday so we can set up, I can get the office and everything like that good to go. And then you start right back into work. And then the weekend hits and you're tearing down, and because you can't leave on a random Tuesday, you can't leave on a random Wednesday because you have work obligations and stuff like that. And so what we found out is like, hey, we can't just stay somewhere for a week or 2 weeks because you just can't get into a routine and can't get into a rhythm. And you have this decision fatigue because you're constantly moving and thinking, and I'm not actually able to, you know, enjoy the area that we're out exploring because, you're working, and then you might be able to get off and go do some odds and ends and things. But again, if you're, you know, on the East Coast and you're in Maine, it gets dark at 5:30. So you're working till 6, 7 o'clock at night, and we got to do some really cool night hikes with headlamps and stuff to make it work. But it's not this dream that you kind of envisioned how it was going to be. And so what we ended up doing is we changed our travel schedule to stay somewhere at a month at a time. And I think that was a pretty good balance. And what was really cool about it is when we're traveling to these different places, you kind of ask yourself, could you live here? Or, you know, how's the area? Is it, you know, livable? And, you know, could we like settle our roots down if we ever wanted to? And when you're traveling so frequently, you get to see the areas, but you don't really get a feel for like how it's like to actually live there. And so now, you know, staying somewhere for a month, you get to relax. I get some weekends back, and then it's like if it rains for 3 or 4 days in a row, there's no pressure, there's no sweat. You just let it rain, you go about your day, and it's just like if you kind of live there. So you get a really cool feel for it. We ran into this down in North Carolina. So down in Brevard, like the Pisgah and DuPont, there's piles and piles of mountain biking and stuff, but it's in a rainforest. So it's like, it does rain a lot, and you kind of get antsy, like, hey, I want to get out on the trails, but you don't want to tear the trails up and you don't want to go out mountain biking in the rain. So it was like, hey, let's just kind of relax. You get a feel for how the town is and get caught up on other stuff, odds and ends around the RV. And then when the sun starts shining, you go out, you have some fun. So that was really cool about that. Some other stuff that we still have some challenges with is, I was talking about the Starlink connectivity. So Starlink is absolutely awesome, and it was a game changer for us because now we can have our own, you know, Wi-Fi calling if we have to. We have our own dedicated network. But Starlink is not the end-all be-all either. So it depends on where you're at. If you're down in Florida in the wintertime, you have a high concentration of RV parks. You're jammed in, you know, your sites aren't that big. And so what ends up happening is you get throttled down. And so us having the Wii Boost and being able to boost our cell phone coverage, we actually had better connectivity that way than using the Starlink itself. So having multiple options, like I talked about earlier, you know, some folks have the separate cell phone plans and what have you, but you're gonna figure it out. You just have to keep a positive mindset. You can prepare, you know, the best you can, but just don't get too upset. Just keep reminding yourself why you're doing this in the first place whenever those challenges come about. And so with all that said, would we do it again? And we would. So I had a lot of close friends that passed away. Some were relatively young, mid 40s, late 40s, and you just don't know. And so trying to live intentionally, getting out, being the best versions of yourselves. And for me and my wife, going on these cool adventures, even though it took a while for us to get into a routine, into a rhythm, it was definitely worth it. And we were able to, you know, travel, and we're still traveling and able to see all these cool places and get to, you know, meet new friends and new experiences. And so I certainly wouldn't give it up. It's like I said, it's definitely had its challenges and struggles, a lot of late nights, a lot of stress. But you live, you learn, and you just keep putting one foot forward and just smile, and you have a great day. So that's all I got. Active RVers, let me know what you think in the comments, or if you have any other tips or things that you've ran into on the road. To, you know, again, we're trying to build this community. We're trying to help each other out. That's all I have, guys. So see you later.